Hey everyone, it's John P. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you 7 watches or types of watches that you should not buy. Now, I will give a bit of a disclaimer here and say that these are going to be situations or types of watches that may introduce problems for the wearer if you're not aware of them. I always recommend to buy what you're going to wear and enjoy. So these 7 watches or types of watches, if whatever I'm saying resonates with you or makes sense, maybe you'd like to avoid purchasing them or wearing them in the future to save yourself a ton of headache and hassle because you just didn't know or you didn't anticipate the scenarios that these watches are likely to bring to you. But before we jump into that, guys, please do not forget to check out my new watch marketplace, chronograbs.com, where you can buy and sell watches right now at 0% commission and 0 listing fees. And of course, if you are in the US, because unfortunately, but fortunately for us, because it helps us to better meet your needs, it's only open to the United States right now. And if you do register for a free account, you'll be entered into a drawing for June 15th by June 15th of this year for this Tudor Black Bay. You can see more details on the website itself for the terms and conditions, but that's chronograbs.com. So the first watch that you should consider not buying is a fully ceramic watch, especially on a bracelet. Now, I will say that I'm actually wearing a ceramic watch today, the Omega Speedmaster gray side of the moon, which is a ceramic watch essentially. But especially on a bracelet, the issue where ceramic watches come into play is when you chip, crack, or dent the ceramic. Now, the ceramic materials are generally very scratch resistant, almost unscratchable. I'm sure a diamond could scratch it, the hardest substance. But furthermore, when I see watches, especially that get like a chip on the bracelet because you hit it on the edge of a desk or a doorknob, it's just so unfortunate because there's really nothing you can do besides have the watch sent back to the manufacturer and get new case parts. And when you start talking about something like a Laureato ceramic or an AP Royal Oak ceramic, these become very, very expensive problems. So if you are going to buy a ceramic watch, this would be a great thing to keep on your radar. Now that takes us into complications, especially complications like tourbillons. If you're looking for a 1 or 2 watch collection, having a complication like a tourbillon is not a great idea. The reality is these are very complicated and they require maintenance and they require wearing the watch, in my opinion, in more subtle or less less environments where there's less likely to be damage, because when you start rustling these things around, bumping them into them, once again, it can easily cause problems. These are precision items, objects, and machining that is required to run these types of complications, let alone watches in general. But when you factor that in, I generally avoid newer collectors to not get the tourbillon or some complication like that, because when it comes time for something to break or repair, it's going to be out for service for a long time. You pretty much have to send it back to the manufacturer or find a specialty watchmaker, and that becomes a headache for many people that didn't know that that comes with just the experience of wearing high complication watches. Let me know what you think, comments below. Now that runs into another one that you're likely to see on places like eBay, but you won't see it at Chronograbs, my platform, and that is watches that are as is or needs repair. Generally, whenever I've seen someone that had either reached out to our service center back when I was part of Delray Watch or even today, and they say, oh, I bought this on eBay, it's as is, they didn't know what they have, and they think they got some kind of a great deal. No. The scenario is almost always that someone sold it using those kind of loophole or caveat terms so that they kind of remove from themselves the negative karma or the negative thought to them internally in their mind of selling you a watch that they know is broken and probably had a hefty repair quote from the authorized dealer or the boutique. So as is watches, really take caution and really expect high risk if you're to buy one of these types of watches. But that also leads us into a type of watch that really don't exist anymore occasionally, but it's few and far between. It's rarer than ever because of things like the internet, and that is the barn find. There are no more little old ladies that have a watch in their drawer. Little old ladies now are on the internet. They're pretty good at Google, most of them from what I've seen. And so kind of the days are gone where you have this little old lady whose husband died and left a watch in a drawer. It could still happen, but generally take great caution when looking at a watch that claims to be a barn find, because generally if something's too good to be true, it probably is. That takes us into watch alternatives. I myself had made plenty of videos in the past on this channel and other platforms where I've talked about alternatives to popular watches, alternatives to Rolex Submariners, alternatives to Audemars Piguet Royal Oaks. Now, setting aside budgetary constraints, right? Like if you can't afford a Royal Oak, it's perfectly fine to pick up a watch that, you know, maybe you could also enjoy because it gives you a similar style. But if you're looking at a watch that's an alternative, but you can't afford, or maybe in the near future, you can't afford the actual watch that you want, this follows my theme and kind of my mantra of buying what you're going to wear, even if it takes you a little bit longer to acquire the watch. Generally, when I see people buy alternatives that could have afforded the watch if they just waited, or, you know, they chose the option that was less expensive, although they could afford the more expensive option, they generally are feeling like they're missing out on something, and it doesn't quite scratch that itch that they had kind of developed and played over in their mind, kind of lusting after the watch for maybe months, if not years. And so alternatives are fun and cool, and they serve a place and purpose, but always try, if you can, to get the watch that you want, because that's probably more likely, if not certainly likely, to make you happy. Let me know what you think about alternatives in the comments below. Now, that takes us into watches that you think you can quick flip, because think is the key word here. There's plenty of people in the Facebook groups, on forums, and elsewhere that buy a watch because they think it's a phenomenal price and they think they can flip it for $500 or something, right? They see some TikTok videos of, hey, this and that and the other, and they think they can just walk down the street and flip it for $500. But I'm here to tell you that is not the case. And even if you can flip it for $500, let's say you bought it on one of the forums, or you buy it on Chronograbs, and you because we have really great pricing because we don't charge any fees, but let's say you buy it there, and I'm going to arbitrage and put it on eBay and make $500. After the fees, after the time, after the trip to the UPS or FedEx store, at least in my opinion, I don't think it's really worth it. Now, it could be. I'm not going to speak for everyone there, but generally, when someone buys a watch because they think they can flip it for a little more, it ends up being a headache, a hassle, and way more work than they anticipated. We saw this a lot with micro brands, especially with Ming. People were buying the Mings to flip them. But as we come to see, it just doesn't really work like that. It's not as simple as it seems. And lastly, you should not buy watches with aftermarket dials or replacement dials. Now, there's a couple of reasons for this. First, it hurts the value of the watch. If you got a dial swap, or you got a watch that has an aftermarket dial or a repainted dial, that's going to hurt the value of the watch. Now, if you plan to intend to wear the watch every day and you love it and you just enjoy the look of it, hey, fine. I won't stop you from doing that if that's what you want to do, just as long as you know what you're getting into. But should the day come along where you want to or need to sell the watch, you're going to get much less for it. I can't give you a percentage, but probably 20% less. Where are you going to get a dial? Yeah, you can find some vintage Rolex dials floating around the internet, go to the right dealer. You can do that, but there's so many other factors involved. And especially when you get into modern, sometimes depending on the brand, that particular dial color kind of matches the reference of the watch, and the serial with the brand is going to be connected to the dial that it's shipped with. Now, I'm not speaking for all brands, but this has become a lot more common in the watch industry. So I always recommend to keep it stock and do your best to really suss out the dealer or feel the dealer out for if you think that watch looks to be off, or aftermarket dial or dial swap. Don't be afraid to ask, because at the end of the day, it's your hard-earned money that you're spending on the watch, and you should get the watch that you want and also know what you're getting. So guys, this has been a handful of watches that I do not recommend that you buy. Of course, you're more than welcome to chime in the comments below and let me know what you think about these points here and these watches. And also, once again, just buy what you love and you're going to wear, because that's likely to make you happy, or more happy than buying things that you don't want, right? But, you know, you're free to make any choice that you want. You know, you don't have to take my advice, but being in the industry and working with so many people, generally if people don't, you know, follow these things here, they kind of end up regretting it at some point in the future. And guys, once again, do not forget to check out chronograbs.com. Currently 0% commissions, 0 listing fees. And if you sign up with an account and you're based in the US, by June 15th, you'll be entered to win in the drawing the Tudor Black Bay. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you next time. You've been chatting with John P.